Hello and welcome to Hispanic Agenda, Washington's only bilingual news program. I'm Alejandro Negron. Thank you for watching. Today on Agenda, business opportunities in emerging Latin American markets. But first, a cover equating Latinos to chili peppers on the latest issue of The Economist has given more than a few heartburn. What are the facts about American Hispanics that are presented in the article getting lost in the controversy over the cover? That's the first topic for this week's roundtable. Let me welcome the editor-in-chief of El Tiempo Latino, Alberto Avendaño, ABC 7 News, John Gonzalez, and Judy Pino from the Libre Initiative. Welcome all to Hispanic Agenda.
Pleasure to be here.
Are they red hot?
Apparently they are. Did you get heartburn over this article? Alberto Avendaño, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the article?
I don't have stomach problems. I don't have digestive problems. I have cultural issues. And I think that my question to the Economist is, well, if they are going to do a wonderful report about the Asian community, are they going to use chopsticks or red rice instead of red stripes? I think it's too easy.
But let me ask you that.
No. Let me tell you something. I don't.
He's fired up.
I don't see this as the Colbert report. I think the Colbert report is more incisive than the Economist, and I think the Colbert report is okay. What they are doing here is a great story, which, by the way, we have been writing about it for the last 15 years, at least some in the media in this country, and it's great to hear this information, to see this information, to put it on the table as a mainstream issue, which is what it is. This is not a bunch of foreign people arriving yesterday. This is the reality of America, and it's fantastic.
But to ask you about the analogy of the chopsticks that you mentioned.
I think it's a bad choice.
But about the chopsticks that you mentioned, let's say a Hispanic newspaper such as yours was to do a story on Asian Americans. That would be a mistake that I think could happen, and I think we see that in a lot of the way we cover in Spanish media, other groups and races.
You're right. Don't get me started on the stereotypical Spanish media.
I mean, a host in Univision just got fired for comparing the First Lady to...
I agree. And the lack of diversity, in Spanish TV media in general. I mean, those are issues. But this is not the point.
But what about and let me get John in here. John, you filed a report last week precisely on this topic, how Latinos, the rise of Latinos, and how Latinos are a big part and very important for this country, specifically because we will be the future labor force.
I think if you get beyond the cover, and I'll get to that in a second, the article inside is very insightful. It talks about how our country is changing, and it referenced a movie, and I remember buying this movie back in 2003, A Day Without a Mexican. Terrible movie, terrible acting, but the message was good. How the world is changing, the country is changing. We just celebrated St. Patrick's Day this week. I went to an Irish pub. The Irish food made by Mexicans and Salvadoreños. So it is a changing world, and in 30 years, the Latin population in this country will double. So they would have to make a sequel of that movie because it is going to be a different USA as we know it today. And I think that was interesting. As for the cover, yeah, the chili peppers. I don't know. I think I'm getting tired of the whole we're victims.
No, it's not
whatever.
Victims,
you know,
and some are saying that some in the Hispanic community were whining about this, describing it as whining. Now, Judy Pino, let me ask you about this. The article is critical of nativists, specifically those inside of the Republican Party. The article mentions, for example, efforts in Texas, a state that will sooner than later have a majority of Latinos, and efforts in that state to make college education harder for so-called dreamers. You know, those children, those kids brought here as children who are undocumented, when that will probably hurt the state since there are going to be the future labor force.
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
No, I don't agree, because I think a lot of states have gotten really smart and they understand that there's a huge Hispanic demographic and they need to prepare these kids.
But that's not what's happening in Texas and other states.
That's not what's happening, but they need to understand that the population is growing and they need to prepare these kids for the labor force, because that's the reality.
So you agree with the criticism of the
I agree with the criticism.
The challenge is not in this cover. The challenge is not in the chili pepper, which, by the way, many Hispanic Americans...
fried plantains.
That's right. Many Hispanic Americans don't like hot sauces and all this stuff. I do love them, by the way. But that's not the issue. For me, the issue is that our reality is an American reality, and we keep talking about us as the other. We need to finish that, to stop that. On the other hand, the challenge is in our own hands. Sure. The Hispanic community has the duty and the challenge ahead to put our issues as American issues on the table. I think we don't have yet the political structures of power to impose ourselves as real Americans, and that's the challenge.
All right, and I want to close the segment just by reading the last paragraph, or portion of the last paragraph. America has been granted an extraordinary stroke of luck, a big dose of youth and energy, just as its global competitors are graying. And it encourages America to make the most of it, to do as much as they can to get these people to a better situation economically and otherwise.
Yeah, but hold on. These people is us.
Right.
We have a huge responsibility, individual community responsibility, to talk about us too, without stereotypes.
Sure.
But having fun with the stereotypes. I don't have any problem.
All right, we'll come back with the roundtable. Stay with Hispanic Agenda. Coming up, we'll dive into presidential politics as Hillary Clinton meets with Latino influentials in preparation for a all-out offensive on a Republican candidate that could be very appealing to Latino voters. Coming up on Hispanic Agenda. Welcome back to Hispanic Agenda. I'm Alejandro Negron. Let me welcome back this week's roundtable, the editor-in-chief of El Tiempo Latino, Alberto Avendaño, ABC 7 News, John Gonzalez, and Judy Pino from the Libre Initiative. Next item on the agenda, presidential politics. Hillary Clinton has been meeting with key Latino elected officials and political operatives to consult themes for her potential presidential run in 2016. Clinton's biggest worry as to the Latino vote? Jeb Bush. Why? Let's get into it with the roundtable. All right, guys, I'll start with Judy Pino. You're very familiar with Jeb Bush. First, what do you think of Hillary Clinton meeting with key Latino elected officials and preparing certain themes for the campaign? And what do you think about Jeb Bush as a potential contender?
Well, I think Hillary meeting with Latino officials is par for the course. She wants to get their vote. She wants to get the Latino support. But I don't think that she's going to fool anybody. This is somebody who hasn't been transparent, and I don't think she's a friend of the Latino community versus Jeb, who has a proven record of being a friend to the Latino community.
How is she unfriendly to the Latino community?
Well, I don't know if you recall when the children were crossing the border, she was critical of that. So, I mean, I think the Latino community really needs to do their research and not sell their soul to one party as they have been for many, many years. I think the Latino community, as they grow, needs to get smarter and understand the politics of the United States, become more acculturated, more civically involved so that they can make wiser decisions, because at the end of the day, they're really going to be impacted because of how much they're growing.
And that not all Republicans are Steve King from Iowa. You have guys like Jeb Bush, who has a clear record supporting not only immigration reform, but education and other issues important to Latinos.
And many others in the GOP. Judy, I have to tell you something. You should have agreed with Hillary when she made those comments. I think they were a little put out of context, but it wasn't that bad. I mean, she was talking about the loss of the land and all these things. So conservatives should have agreed with her instead of being hostile to her.
No, but I haven't seen her being supportive of the immigrants or the Latino community.
But if you allow me, Alejandro, I want to talk about political marketing. I think the Hillary Clinton and the Clinton brand goes well with the Latino community.
And she did well in 2008.
Correct. It has to do with the past, and that is important for politics, and that's important for a strong candidate for the Latino vote as Jeb Bush.
Let me get John in here. John, is it fair to say that the Latino vote is the Democrats to lose at this moment?
Absolutely. I think we've been seeing a theme every election now. I think the Latino vote becomes more important. And if I'm a Latino voter at home, obviously I am, looking at the candidates next year and thinking who appeals to my people more, I think Jeb Bush is a nightmare for the Democratic Party. You have a guy who speaks the language very well, speaks Spanish probably better than I do, lived in Latin America, is married to a Mexican woman, is going to have the support more than likely of a Marco Rubio and a Ted Cruz.
Comes from a swing state, very popular not only in southern Florida, but in that very influential I-4 corridor in Florida. So this is important. Now, I like what Representative Loretta Sanchez said about the Latino vote. anybody who understands a national presidential campaign understands that the Latino vote is up for grabs, she says. So if you're going to disrespect us, she goes on to say, by thinking you can come in the last 2 weeks and throw a guacamole and tortilla chip party and ask us for your vote, is not going to work that way.
I think it's not going to work out, and I think it's not going to happen either. I think political candidates are more sophisticated than that. I hope so, and I think so. On the other hand, I can tell you right now, Jeb Bush is a guy who is extremely empathetic to this community, not only because he sees this electorate as a niche, but as a reality that has to do with his own family. So I think it's going to be a very strong candidate. Let's see what the GOP has to say. Let's see if he gets past the primaries. But he wrote a very interesting book called Immigration Wars, giving the credit to the immigrants in this land as a real economic and social factor.
And he also referred to immigration or crossing the border as an act of love, which will get him in trouble during the primary process. So we'll see how if he gets too bruised out of that process, and we'll see what happens. We'll definitely pay attention.
And for the record, guacamole and chili peppers, very good together.
That's right.
Thank you so much, panel. Coming up, I'll speak with a very eloquent young Latino about an issue very dear to his heart, creating a generation of non-smokers. Then later, Latin America, open for business opportunities in emerging markets south of the border. Coming up on Hispanic Agenda. Welcome back to Hispanic Agenda. I'm Alejandro Negron. Next item on the agenda, teens against tobacco. My next guest is a young Latino who's committed himself to a very lofty goal, creating a generation of non-smokers. I spoke with Daniel Jufra on Kick Butt Day, an event that raises awareness about the consequences of using tobacco products. Similar efforts have been successful. The CDC reports that the use of cigarettes by middle and high school students has indeed declined from the year 2000. But what about other products, such as smokeless tobacco, hookahs, and what about electronic cigarettes? Here's what Daniel had to say.
So indeed, we've seen in the past 20 years since the first Kick Butts Day event, since today is the 20th anniversary of the first Kick Butts Day event, we've seen a decline in conventional smoking rates, talking about conventional cigarettes, in youth. On the other hand, electronic cigarettes have been booming. They're incredibly popular now, and there's a community behind it that's incredibly robust as well. So that poses some really complicated obstacles in our fight against the tobacco industry.
Are these new tactics by the tobacco industry to entice youth to consume other products?
Well, the interesting thing about that is that the same advertisements that they used 50 years ago when it was completely legal for them to advertise on the TV and have sponsorships for race car drivers and all of that, they're kind of the same now. If you've seen blue e-cigarette advertisements now, you see them as, you know, the catch line of "take your freedom back." That's something that appeals to the young age. And it's really interesting. It's almost like history repeating itself, where we're seeing cigarette manufacturers and big tobacco industry companies advertising towards kids in a very similar way that we've seen in the past. So even though it's not new, it's unfortunately working. We're seeing rates of e-cigarette smoking increase in youth that never smoked cigarettes in the past.
Tell me about some of the events held this week on Kick Butt Day and the campaign Not a Replacement.
Yeah, so the Not a Replacement campaign is this year's Kick Butts Day initiative, started by Maggie from Florida SWAT. She was able to make this a national sensation, and what it is a campaign where we're asking youth across the country, advocate or not, to post a selfie of themselves with a little piece of paper that says "Not a Replacement." What that means is they're telling the tobacco industry that they are not just a replacement smoker. They are an athlete, or they are an activist, or they're a researcher. Maybe they want to be an athlete in the future. And all of those things are telling the tobacco industry that they're not going to be held liable for being their next consumers. They want to be much more than that. They know, all of us know, all of the youth know what tobacco can do to harm you, and we don't want to do that.
Daniel, if you can explain the campaign, the Not a Replacement, explain to us where the term replacement comes from.
Yeah, there was actually a draft Yeah, there was actually a notice from a tobacco industry in the 70s where they were talking about youth as being the replacement smokers for smokers that unfortunately had passed away from smoking-related diseases, because in the business that they find themselves in, they have to replace their consumers because due to the fact that smoking is so lethal, they end up passing away and they have to find new consumers. So they refer to youth and minorities as replacement smokers.
Now, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention states that nearly 9 out of 10 smokers first tried cigarettes by age 18 and 99% first tried cigarettes by age 26. Talk to us about the importance of prevention early on.
Yeah, so the use of prevention at a young age is extremely important in any addiction, just because of the way that the brain is shaping at a young age. The drugs and things that you put through your body at a young age tend to become a habit. So that's why you see such high rates of addiction and such high rates of people smoking their second and third cigarette after smoking their first before the age of 18. That's why it's so important that with campaigns like the Real Cost and with Kick Butts Day and with the legacy campaigns, you're seeing a lot more emphasis on youth, something that wasn't seen in the past. And that's a very, very good thing, because hopefully we'll be able to band together organizations, governments, and youth to create the next generation of smoke-free.
Well, thank you, Daniel Jufra, very eloquent young man there. Thank you so much for your time. Stay tuned with Hispanic Agenda. Next, business opportunities in Latin America. That's our next item. Hispanic Agenda continues shortly. Welcome back to Hispanic Agenda. I'm Alejandro Negron. There's lots of opportunities for entrepreneurs interested in emerging markets south of the border. All you need to know is a little bit of know-how. Joining us now to talk about this is Alma Alfaro Lasca, Director of the International Initiative for the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, and Angela Franco, President and CEO of the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Welcome back to Hispanic Agenda.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here.
You both look great. All right, so let's start with this international initiative that you guys have started at the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Tell me about the idea and tell the audience how they can benefit from it.
Sure. So we started with thinking about it 6 years ago, since the chamber is located in Washington, D.C., and we have access to all the embassies and the commercial attaches from Latin America. And we serve the Hispanic community, so Latin America is just a natural market for us. And a lot of the Hispanic community in this region is first generation, and that's when trade happens. So thanks to the support of the Convention Center, we started our international initiative to do business exchange and also to help with the market of the District of Columbia internationally. So we're working on tourism and business. And we decided to move this initiative along. And Alma Alfaro is taking ownership of the initiative at the Greater Washington Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
So Alma, let me bring you in here. I know you have a lot of experience on this topic. I know you also worked on NAFTA. On how that came about. If you could tell us a little bit about your experience.
Correct. Thank you so much, Alejandro. Yeah, I was working for the Embassy of Mexico here in Washington, D.C., and I have the great opportunity to become involved with the NAFTA negotiations. It was an amazing experience, and that was actually the first free trade agreement that the United States signed with any Latin American country. So let's say that we were the first one to have that experience. It was amazing because we realized how many opportunities Latin America has with the United States.
So let's talk about some of those opportunities for entrepreneurs, whether they're Latinos, Hispanics, or from any other group, ethnic or racial, to do business in Latin America. What are some of those opportunities? Well,
it's in, let's say there are two main areas. One is on products and services, and the other one is on investments. If we talk about products and services, of course, Latin America is able to export so many agricultural and industrial products, agro-industrial products, and manufacturing products. For example, we talk in Mexico, the auto industry is amazing now, thanks to the merging with the United States and other countries. If we talk a little bit in Central America, there are other sectors also, like textiles, apparel, again, agro-industrial products. And now they are going also in some more advanced industries too. So I will say that Latin America has to really take advantage of those opportunities with other countries, but particularly with the United States.
All right.
We are in the same continent, so is the best way we can do is help each other.
So let's talk about helping folks who are interested in this. You have an event, well, you have next Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Is the expo for the chamber, but the next day you have an international event for business. Talk to us about that.
So we're having, the day of the expo, we're going to have an international pavilion. So companies, we'll have 15 international companies attending this year, and they're going to be exhibiting there. The next day, the 25th, we're going to start with an economic outlook of the region, this region, and then we're going to do an economic outlook of Latin America, and then we're going to have a couple of panels. One that is going to be talking about specifically free trade agreements, and the second one is going to be talking about opportunities that the government offers to local companies to be able to export.
All right, if you want more information, you can log on to
gwhcc.org.
All right, thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Pleasure to talk to you. Please check out our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Tune into Telemundo Washington for the Spanish version of this program. And join us next week here on News Channel 8 and see this program again at 9 p.m. here on News Channel 8. Thank you for watching.